Seed processing, like I said, you don't have to be rich to process seed. And most heirloom and specialty seeds are thrashed. Most of them are done by hand anyway, because the reason is they've got such small lots to work with. You don't have thousands of pounds of something or hundreds of pounds or something. You might have, maybe in corn you might have hundreds of pounds, or in beans or something, but still you're not out there doing a big commercial Ponderosa out there trying to produce something like that. Most of the stuff, and your highest quality seeds comes from hand processed seed, is where it comes from. And you can build your own equipment too. Most research equipment that we used in our plant breeding career, it had to be built by hand. You couldn't go out there and go buy it at a equipment dealer, because they'd look at you. What do you want? We want a combine that we can put in the back end of a S10 pickup. And they think you're crazy, but they build them that small. Actually, they build them smaller than that now. They build them about as big as a smart car now that you can buy. And you can also get the older machines that your granddad or your great-granddad used back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Those machines were fine, and you can buy those for a least expensive price doing that, and you can use those too to process your seed with too. So you don't have to go out there and buy this high dollar stuff. This older stuff, I do just as good a job. They used it 50, 60, 70 years ago, and it'll work just as good now as it did back then. So the purpose is just to make sure you process your seed correctly. This is some of the thrashing equipment. This is back in my younger days, I'd rather not say. This is a small bundle thrasher is what we call it. This is where you can take bundles and you can thrash them. And there's a pan underneath down at the bottom, and you can catch it in the pan. It's still got some trash in it. You've got to re-clean it, but at least you're not sitting, or you're not there hand shelling that stuff or whatever. This is a little way to speed it up. And you can build one of these without any problem. They're simply built. This is powered with a gasoline engine. So it was portable. We could take it anywhere, put it in the back end of a pickup, and we could move it to any field we wanted to, or any nursery that was working with on that. This is a small plot combine. This is a Hegi that's made in Germany. This is a Hegi 125. This one was just the operator on it. But the one that my wife and I used, she used to sit right there in that area. She had a platform she used to sit on. And as we cut 22 feet at a time, we'd change varieties every 22 feet in the field. And then we could do 3 of those a minute. We had our act together. I'll brag on us on that. I had that mirror right there I put on that combine. That's a side view mirror off of a pickup truck. So I could watch her when she had the bag tied and she'd throw it up on top of the combine. It was ready for me to move to the next 22 feet. It's how we did that. Once you got your rhythm started, it was just like working clockwork doing that. We could do 3,000 of those bags in an 8-hour day. We were booking it. As I'd say to Harvey, we were rocking and rolling when you can do that. And each row was a different variety that we were working with. And it was 100% clean when it come out of the combine. That's how clean it was. But those are not cheap. A brand new one will cost you about $100 grand, but you can buy them used for $3,000 or $4,000, $5,000. You know, if your neighbors is doing the same thing that you're doing, you could go in as a group and buy it and share it and cut your costs down, and also cut your time down doing that. But that's just one. There's another one that was commercially made here in the United States, and I see a couple of people that I'd talked to yesterday. There was a Massey Ferguson made a small combine. It was self-propelled. They called it an MF, Massey Ferguson, the initials. They called it a Massey Ferguson 35 combine. It had an 8-foot grain platform on it, and you could cut small grains, you could cut beans, you could cut lentils, whatever you wanted. You could cut canola with it or whatever, but it was a small combine where you could move it around and get into acre or half acre, quarter acre fields like doing that. And you can buy those for about $500 still right now. And there is some floating around in the research seed industry that's still available that you could buy for little or nothing too. And I wish I had a picture of that. I've got one at home, but it doesn't do me good here in California, 20-some hundred miles away. But you can put a 2-row corn head on that combine, so you can shell corn with that head or with that combine also, if you want to. So there's older machinery out there that your grandfathers, your great-grandfathers, and so on used that you can use in these situations like this that don't have to tie up a lot of money. All right, like I said, seed storage is very important, and it depends on the type and species that you're working with. But your initial quality is based on how the production is done and how you handle that seed when you go into that. And of course, the storage environment is the next important thing. Short-term storage is always a concern, especially for heirloom growers. How am I going to save the seed and keep it until I get ready to plant it, or if I need to store it over a longer period of time, what do I do? And this was the same concern 10 or 12,000 years ago. So nothing's really changed on that situation. We're still working on that. A refrigerator is fine for short-term storage. The only thing about a refrigerator is when you open and close that thing on a regular basis, you're going to create an environment in there that's not conducive for seed storage. You're going to have that temperature rise. It may not rise very much, but it's enough to affect that seed storage. And you always want to put the seed in the back of the refrigerator. Do not put it in the front, because that's where your most temperature changes, is in the front when you open that door. And always remember, put it back into the refrigerator, because when you open that door, all of a sudden you're going to get the temperature, room temperature, plus the temperature of the refrigerator, and then it's going to balance itself out and it's going to be warmer than what it should be. And this is an example of one of our refrigerators. And you can see there's no room in it. You're lucky if you can get your hand through them boxes. But that's the way you want it. The more you put in the refrigerator, the better your temperature control is, because if you've got empty space in there, it's not doing you no good. It's harder to keep cool when you've got nothing in there rather than having it full all the time. Now, the freezer works the same way. All right, long-term storage, it's similar to short-term storage, but it's more than 2 years. And a freezer usually runs about 15 degrees below zero. We keep ours at 20. And most seed will last a minimum of 5 years. This is just a general rule. This is not set in stone. But you can keep varieties in there 20 years or more. And like I said, we've got varieties in there that's over 50 years old. The freezer answers to the temperature fluctuations. When you open that door, you're not going to get such a drop in that temperature that causes an effect on your seed quality. And this is a typical freezer. Of course, it's full. All of our freezers are full. We'd like to get a walk-in freezer where we've got more room. And hopefully we'll definitely get one of those eventually. But it's going to take a big one for us. And these are seed storage containers. Like I said, you don't have to spend a lot of money. Butter, empty butter dishes, cottage cheese. Some of these are glass vials. I've got a lot of baby food jars when we fed our son, and we use a lot of those baby food jars to store seed in, and they work great for small lots of seed. And like I said, keep it simple. Don't complicate the situation. And these are some of the seed storage containers of some of the material that we store. Labeling, for heaven's sakes, make sure you label what you save. If you don't label it, you don't know what it is. And that's where the biggest mistakes come in, is something's not labeled correctly, or they forgot to label it. So always label it. This is this year's seed. Put it in a paper packet. And that is in the freezer right now. I've got the name, I've got the lot number, and I've got the year that it was produced. Of course, that's in the lot number too. You can code it any way you want to. And it's also got the row where it originally come from, where it was grown at. So if I ever want to see where it was grown at, I can go back and look at that. Seed deterioration. Seed loses half of its life for every % of increase of seed moisture that it retains. between 5 and 14%. That's why you want to dry it down to 5.5 to 7 or 8%. Longevity, this is just some general rules. I'm not going to go in depth with that, but this applies to seed that's stored from 32 degrees Fahrenheit to 122 degrees Fahrenheit. And of course, like I said, moisture and humidity affects seed quality. That is two of the most detrimental things that affects it. Thank you.